Right, we continue. Today's session we introduced chromatic dispersion, and we defined it with the different wavelengths. We talked of intermodal dispersion and we defined it with different modes. With chromatic dispersion, we ended up talking about phase velocity and group velocities. And we said the group velocity, we're going to be using it to calculate our material dispersion. Why? Because speed is also distance over time. What is dispersion? Dispersion is sort of time difference. That is dispersion. Dispersion is a technical word using optical fibers to define time difference. Pulse broadening. This is dispersion. If you have a pulse like this, if it ends up like this, dispersion has happened. This width, this is just time of the pulse. This width, time. This time is greater than the other one. Dispersion is time. Unit for time, seconds. If you are to calculate the dispersion at some point, you should know it is time. Don't be confused by the fancy words dispersion. It is just time, time difference. And that it will be important for understanding. Can also calculate this in intermodal dispersion. What is that? Different modes, different parts, different time of arrival. It is just time, which leads to the broadening, which is the broadening, if I can say. So, inside of our one, the dispersion, kind of chromatic dispersion, at the end is the time difference. Ukura, create a pause, iroro. It's just time, wonder. Right. Time yo igawanda, it leads us to that relationship bandwidth. Time igawanda yo yepa pause you. It means bandwidth radio rather low. That is why intermodal dispersion is a problem. Right. Material dispersion. Chromatic dispersion. In my types, this one. Material dispersion, what is that? Chromatic dispersion. I just highlighted here with material dispersion. What is material dispersion? Don't know what that is, where it came from. Magai wana wa material dispersion. Did you not see it? Intermodal dispersion, I see that. Chromatic dispersion, I see that. Material dispersion. We also have another one. What is that? After material dispersion, we have another one. I need the definition. What is material dispersion? Anyone? In English, it's read and some of these things I forget. Videos. What is material dispersion? The other one, the wave Chakadaro dispersion. Nobody. I'm not going on with material dispersion. Wave guide dispersion. I've been looking for this one. Wave guide dispersion. Yeah, and you're going to make videos. I'm on All right, we have what we call material dispersion. I think it's part of chromatic dispersion. Definition, what is material dispersion? This is dispersion, a resultant, which is a resultant of different wavelengths of the constituent waves. Different wavelengths of the constituent waves. Let me see. Material dispersion. Kind I'm still not going on my videos. You need to say it. That's why you need to see my videos. Maybe it's information that I see the one. And however, I highlighted it for discussion here. Results from different velocities of the constituent waves. I think basically this is what we were discussing for the introducer chromatic dispersion. Different wavelengths leading us to different velocities. All right. We also have waveguide dispersion. Waveguide dispersion due to wavelength. Due to wavelength dependence of mode propagation constant. All right. These two, material dispersion and waveguide dispersion, if you add these two, you have chromatic dispersion. Mute yourselves. Diana, mute. Rhino Jabayo. Mute yourself. Right. This is chromatic. If you combine those two, you have chromatic dispersion. Waveguide is due to the dependence of the wavelength to the propagation constant. In this one, different velocities of the wavelengths, material dispersion and waveguide dispersion. Right. We've separated chromatic dispersion into those two. Now, with the definition comes also my formulas. All right, we defined group velocity. We also need to define, this is delta, change in W over change in T. Right, a lot of things in between, we get to this formula, 1 over C n lambda minus lambda dn the lambda naught. Right, let me try to find what is in between that. Right, we have this formula here. It has what we have already introduced, which is the group velocity. The formula as a whole, this is the group velocity expressed in terms of free space. Of course, we define group velocity in simple terms here as delta W over delta K. But what is delta W over delta K? If we find the differentials of W and the differentials of K, where do we get? We get to that equation where we have the group velocity expressed in terms of free space. We have n lambda naught here. We have lambda naught. We have dn the lambda naught. What is that? I highlighted those three in the component definition. What is it? With the simple one, what is C? So that I don't know. What is C? Anyone to respond? Unmute yourselves and just respond. What is C?
Speed of light in free space.
Speed of light in free space.
Speed of light.
Right. My definition, let me be fair to say this. My definition at this point, they might be very tricky. The best way to understand this is to understand how they are derived. But unfortunately, understanding how they are derived, it would take us the whole course. That's why up. Now you need to understand what they mean. You have definition here. A definition in a relationship here, VG, and my elements are my refractive index, number wavelength in free space. What does that define? It just defines VG. Group velocity. Now, knowing what is this is important. Change n lambda naught. What is that? Anybody?
Refractive index depending on wavelength.
Yeah, didn't know. Refractive index depending on the wavelength lambda 0. The refractive index, which is very important. The refractive index, it gives us the speed of light in a given medium. This is V, velocity, speed of light. The refractive index is very important. It gives us the speed of light in a given medium. At the same time, different wavelengths, some optical fibers or light, they have different wavelengths. I think Magafura pane 1550 nanometers. Magafura pane 850 nanometers. My number, there is no way I'm going to discuss my numbers. What is the third one? 1.3, I think. Panagamo no my numbers. Anyone, I can go on, I can do one of those. Abana, I'm shocked. You don't have to do this course. Can also not my numbers are my wavelengths. Light it is a wave. It can be defined by my wavelengths. And with these wavelengths, pane and traveler in a speed is suitable for a given optical fiber. Could we say maximum efficiency a communication? What is the best wavelength? Between these three, there is the best wavelength, I think, it's probably 1.3, I think. You need to know these things. I will introduce let me see if I save the document. Use it. 201. Let me see. You need to know my wavelengths are your, I think there are classes. Introduction. There are classes at above. Let me share this with you. This diagram, you need to understand this diagram and Rupaya. Zoom recording.
Yes.
This diagram. Do you know how to explain this diagram? How do you zoom there? Zoom. All right. Do you know how to explain that diagram? Anyone? Kana wakambosangana naro zvikuru wakambosangana nemawavelength andakupa. Why were you not responding, Mara? Right. We have diagram ready now. Highlight kangu karuonekera. Ndikwanise kuexplain. That diagram, it defines my wavelengths with respect to attenuation, y-axis, attenuation. Panama wavelengths and a more attenuation my optical fibers. My wavelengths yayo atfana umashandisa. Why? Because more attenuation, that is loss. So tikatarisa hapo my wavelengths and the least attenuation, they're happy. Let me try to do this. Skipping to. What are the range of wavelengths and the lowest attenuation up? New. Oh, yeah. Trouble here. The better answer. Range of wavelengths with the least attenuation. New. Take this one here. Share. Right. All right. Do you see this attenuation? You see that? Someone to respond. There's an in between information. It's very necessary. I'm not going to miss something. Someone to respond to that.
Yes.
Yes. Right. In attenuation, this graph is very important. The Royal exam here on the explain with the teacher critical. In attenuation on the y-axis, in a wavelength on the x-axis. Wavelength, it defines light. Wavelength, it defines light at some point. Light is a wavelength. It is an electromagnetic wave. It has amplitude, frequency. It has wavelength. At different wavelengths, you have different attenuations. Attenuation here do define animal line ayo. For example, this one is the gap arrow. And can do draw. Panel line here or good so here. Yeah, attenuation here. If you die, you die. You quit. That is attenuation. Right? Now, how you define this graph. On a tarot at a given wavelength, for example, 800, the attenuation is this high, around 3. But at this point, it is around 0.4. At this point, it is very, very low. Attenuation is very low. It corresponds to which range of wavelengths? Question. Magatesa graph here. Let us think for a moment. Resume recording. All right. So I was saying that diagram is very important in understanding my optical fibers. I should have introduced it tanga, but I think I made an assumption to my videos, which is not the case. That diagram is important. What does it show us? It shows us the relationship between wavelength and attenuation. Attenuation. What is attenuation? This is loss. If attenuation is high, it means our loss is high. So we have a relationship, your wavelength and loss. So mukatarisa loss attenuation here, it will describe a number of curves, but the name so and e rabe. Attenuation get high, of which attenuation is high to the attenuation is low. Where is the attenuation low? The attenuation is low with this corresponding wavelength. 1.3, 1.5 nanometers. So iwewe kana uri kuda kuita communication iri efficient isina loss yakanyanyisa, light raunoshandisa for your transmission, it should have this range of wavelengths. Ukauya light rako rine 850 nanometers, what will happen? Attenuation, it is very high. It means unenge une loss. You understand? Pana rundinzwisisa werapa. I think the silence is a bit deafening at this point. Pana ndinzwisisa maexplain ndaita chinhu icho. Mune vanhu here muno? Hai. Amakuwa again. Chief Brian Muchabayo. The hell is happening? Someone to respond. Mamsipo. Chikwamba. Amunonyatsonzwa. All right. I don't know what is happening here. Ndati, at one point you're going to encounter that diagram exam. I should have gave you at the beginning of the course, but I think my videos are in that video. You need to understand that video. What does it mean? The question in video that image. Where are you answering it? It has my wavelengths on the x-axis. We have my wavelengths here. We have attenuation here. What is attenuation? That is loss. The graph shows the relationship between wavelength of light and attenuation. For different wavelengths, you have different attenuation. And attenuation apo, that curve and that draw. This one. I don't get one about diagram. That is your attenuation. So you are channel for noise even the at different given wavelengths, we have different attenuations. Which wavelength offers the least attenuation, which means the least loss? That a diagram abo range 1.3 nanometers to 1.5550 nanometers. Though, but in the lowest, not range. Let me not say range. Wavelength, that range because at this point, light 1.4 attenuation is very high. So these two wavelengths, 1.3, 1.550, do light run off an suffer transmission. Why? Because it is the least attenuation. So explaining that diagram, those are not respond to Panama wavelengths, Panama attenuation, different wavelengths, different attenuations, different losses. Ko panel least loss in the pap 1.3 nanometers, 1.5 nanometers. Iwe okashandisa 800 nanometers light rako. Laser light, random specifications are not opio. Laser light, I think Dorine 1.5550 nanometers. LED light, what characteristics of LED light? Dorine 850 nanometers. LED light, kurishandisa for transmission. Yes, you can transmit, but your communication system will not be efficient. Why? Because light is more attenuation. It's because 850 nanometers. Question number 2, assignment. Characteristics of LED light. I feel this is important. Characteristics characteristics of LED and laser. All right. Advantages of laser light. All right. That is question number 2, assignment 3. Why I feel it's important is because pauchapa characteristics of laser light, pauchapa characteristics of LED light, you encounter these wavelengths. Light iroro, it is defined by my wavelength R. For a given light, if the wavelength is 800, you see the attenuation area from this diagram is high. That's a disadvantage. Another one, can a light iroro wavelength 1.550? It means loss is shoma. That is an advantage. Obviously, there are more advantages. Obviously, there are more characteristics. But one of my characteristics of those two is my wavelengths are 850, I think, for LED light. For laser light, I'm not sure, between 1.3 and 1.5. That is it for that diagram. Anyone has known again? Respond. Okay. Right, ndikuda one kuti anditaurire tiri kutaura nezveya. Chief, describe that diagram for me. Layman terms, Shona zvayo. Diagram mirror. I need a description of that diagram. Chief Abitania. Ndakakumirira.
Mudzidzisi mandiwandira mudzidzisi.
Haunomboresponda to anything today. Saka unowandirwa. I need you to respond to this. Describe that diagram for me. Zvese zvangandichitaura. Anything chawabata.
Chandabata mudzidzisi ndechekuti
Abitania chabata and funguti chiripo. Right, Brian uchabayiwa. Anything chawabata pa diagram hilo. Chatanga ubvisira vanhu mamax ipapo. Ubvisa iyo. Yes, Brian uchabayiwa, respond.
Line rakanzi 1990s matizvoni represent attenuation.
Yes.
So amati pana 1.3 apo pakati apo pa second window. Pane like ndo pane wavelength iri represent the lowest the lowest ipapa nepa third pa third ndo pane lowest attenuation. So wavelength here 1.5 and then
that is all. That is all. Izvozvo ndizvo unopinda uchiziva muexam izvozvo kuti 1990 ma-engineers akawana kuti attenuation yakamira so. Ukazoenda uno researcha unowana detail nezvawataura izvozvo, you understand this much better. 1990 ndosandauza iro. 1990 ma-engineers akaona kuti ndo attenuation iyo iripo with corresponding ma-wavelengths. You need also to understand kuti first window, second window, third window chi. I'll leave that to you. Another thing, you need to understand at this point pane low attenuation, at this point pane low attenuation. You need to know what are the corresponding wavelengths. Okay, you need to know kuti laser light, LED light, rine ma wavelengths akaita sei. Laser light rine ma wavelengths akaita sei. Iri LED totoziva. Between these two there is laser. I'm not sure there is normal. There is laser light here. Saka chinoita kushandisa laser light and LED light chi is obviously laser light. Why? because nyaya attenuation iro LED rinoshandisika especially for very short distances. For very short distances you can get to communicate with LED light, but for longer distances loss inenge yakaita sei yakawandisa, loss inenge yakawandisa. I think I've done enough. Assignment yedu yapo. Characteristics of LED laser, advantages of laser light. I don't remember the first question. Any questions? Does it a bit off topic? In my wavelength theory, it was necessary. Nope, no questions. That means we are done for the day.